Hello, everybody. Just like I did last year with the congressional leadership of the Republican Party, it looks like, we need to move the focus to, multiple, and I mean multiple states needing new chairs, as well as the National Republican Party needing a new chair. So, yeah, Ronna McDaniel should have not been reelected this year. Thank God it's her last term, and I highly doubt she's going to resign, but let's just say on a hypothetical she will. We're going to talk about 10, actually 15 replacements that could replace her and would do immediately a much better job, controversial or not. But first, we're going to look at the states first. There are quite a few states that we're going to look at here. One of which is just me, critiquing a chairperson saying, you're really good at what you do, but you should do these things and you'd be perfect, right? First off, the state of Alaska, and I might be asking, what? Alaska's a red state. It really doesn't need a new chair. And then you realize they lost the state Senate because they couldn't control their own party. Republicans don't have the majority in the Alaska State Senate. They do not. Ann Brown, the current chairwoman, needs to go. And now this might be a kind of a controversial take. I think Joe Miller, that Joe Miller, the guy who primaried out Lisa Murkowski, would be an amazing chairperson for Alaska. Remember, Alaska is a libertarian-heavy state, and Joe Miller is very much a libertarian through and through. I don't even know if he's still still affiliated with the Republican Party, which, if he's not, even so, recommending Joe Miller is already a controversial thing to do, which, let's say Donald Trump said, I want Joe Miller. He's a libertarian. He's switched parties to the Libertarian Party in the past. He's abandoned the Republican Party in the past. That's going to give some pushback. And with him as chair, he would absolutely take the state the state party in a different direction, which is why I think he'd be great. It'd be the most libertarian state Republican Party out of every single state Republican Party. It'd be great to see. Next off, we have Colorado. Dave Williams. I have two people who were elected after the midterms that I'm saying get rid of. Colorado's one of them with Dave Williams. He's currently targeting, moderate Republicans, trying to get them out of the Republican Party by primarying them, which Colorado's not a state you should be doing that in. Absolutely not, especially since it's trending vastly to the left, and you're only pushing it to the left. So get rid of him. And instead pick someone who a lot of people thought was going to be the GOP nominee for governor, senator, and that was Eli Bremer, the former El Paso County GOP chairman, as well as a former Olympian. So this guy was supported by Mike Garcia. This guy is from I don't want to say suburban, but dense rural area of the country, or of the state, excuse me, which, that's a good thing to be. So he knows how to win elections in a dense rural area, which tend to be somewhat competitive, but really favor Republicans. He'd be a much better improvement over Dave Williams, in my opinion. Remember that guy I was saying, the only person I'm critiquing, not getting rid of? Out of Connecticut, Ben Prado, the current chairman of the Connecticut GOP, he can stay. He does good. His party endorsed Timus Clarides and Bob Stefanowski. That's his name, right? Bob Stefanowski. No, it was Stefanowski. Sorry. But he endorsed Timus Clarides. However, Trump had to ruin everything and endorse Leora Leva. I don't know why the fuck he did that. But the conditions I'd keep Ben Prado is he would need to, push his party into capitalizing early voting, ballot harvesting, as well as focusing on kitchen table issues on statewide elections. Not federal, of course. Stay out of that as much as he can. You'd make the state itself and a lot of races more competitive, similar to what we saw in California and New York. And that's really what Ben Prado should be doing, and I feel like that's what he's going to be doing. 2024 might be the first test for that, I'm not sure. Now we go to the state of Delaware. Jane Brady, the current chairwoman, she's awful. Oh my god, I don't know how you do worse than the previous person, but she did it. And we need to get rid of her in Delaware. Not saying Delaware will ever be winnable in the next 20 years, but still, I'd replace her with someone who won statewide in Delaware in the past 20 years. Ken Simpler. He'd be a great choice to run the Delaware GOP. He'd push it to a very moderate position. However, he'd pick winnable candidates because it's Delaware, right? And he's also very much a team player. Next up, the state of Illinois. Don Tracy, he's been there since 2012, and really, the Illinois GOP hasn't been able to get much of anything done, have they? You could have had a very competitive race with J.B. Pritzker this year, and you didn't do it. That's why you should replace him with former Aurora Mayor Richard Irvin. Of course, it's not in Chicagoland, it's near it, though. And that's really where Republicans need to focus on, is the suburbs and white working class. And if Richard Irvin's running the party, I can guarantee you that much will happen. Will it push Illinois into being like this super competitive state? No. But it's better than what they have now. And if they can win either the state senate or the state house, which I guarantee you they'll do at least one of those things with Irvin as the chairman, that's better than nothing, right? Next is the state of Maine, where Demi Kozonis, I believe that's how you pronounce their name. I don't know if it's a he or a she, but they need to go. You did poorly in the midterms. Jared Golden is in a Trump plus whatever district. You can't run. You haven't been running any great candidates. F it. Throw in Susan Collins' chief of staff, Steve Abbott, in there. This one would be a controversial one, because this guy is like moderate to liberal Republican, and he'd be running as the chairman of the Conservative Party. So it'd be like Aaron O'Toole, right? Up in Canada, he was a liberal running the Conservative Party, right? It'd be like that, though I don't. So I'd give this guy 4 years. If he fucks up, you get rid of him like the Conservatives did with Aaron O'Toole. I believe it's a nice experiment to do with Steve Abbott. He'd probably be able to win a statewide race in Maine by himself. He'd have to get really lucky. Like a red wave, absolutely a neutral year. He'd have to pull some strings, not like corrupt or anything like that. But he'd have to pull some strings with his campaign, and he might be able to do it. Blue wave, fucking forget about it. Next up, the state of Maryland. Nicole Harris is the current chairwoman of the state of the Republican Party in Maryland. She replaced Alex Mooney, by the way, and Alex Mooney did a better job than she did. What the fuck? You need to replace her with J.B. Jennings. He represents a red district down in urban Maryland. Well, it's urban. It's in the urban area, but it's a suburb at the same time. It's kind of hard to. It's also like plurality black or Hispanic. It's one of the two. What I'm saying is J.B. Jennings knows how to win an election. He's always winning them in a landslide, and plus he could probably run the Republican Party in Maryland in a very similar way. Right, and honestly, that's all we care about here. Do you care about what their ideology are, or do you care about winning elections? That's the choice you have to make here, and I care about winning elections. Also making the Republican Party Big Tent, but you didn't hear that last part. Next up, the state of Michigan. This is the other person who got elected after the midterms that I'm saying get rid of her right now. That's Christina Caramo. She needs to go. Trump's pick was a much better choice. I don't know how the fuck she even got elected as chair in the first place. She's already driven donors away from the party, shifting Michigan even left. I guarantee you in 2024 it'll shift left. Not on the presidential level. Actually, it might on the presidential level. Just have to see. Replace her with Perry Johnson. Dear God, please. Perry Johnson is the guy to run Michigan's Republican Party. He's a populist. He supports Social Security and Medicare. He was my choice for president. Now I've got a new choice. Fun fact. I'm not going to say who it is yet. I might say it one day. I think it's pretty obvious who I support, though. But yeah, Perry Johnson should run the Michigan GOP. Next, state of Minnesota. Oh my God, David Hahn, you've been there since 2017, and things have only gotten worse. You've lost control of both state legislatures. How the hell did you get reelected? Anyway, replace him with Hennepin County Sheriff Rich Stenick. The guy got elected in Hennepin County, the place where the Twin Cities are, or, they border the Twin Cities. You see where I'm coming from? He's the Joe Lombardo of Minnesota. If Joe Lombardo can, run a campaign and win in Nevada, this guy can run the entirety of the Minnesota GOP and put them back on the right track at the very least. Like, I don't want these guys to be like, okay, you have to get a statewide victory. No, just do better. Please, just do better. Don't be a failure. Next up, New Jersey, Bob Hugin. He used to be very, very, very promising as a chair pick by Donald Trump. He did good at first, and then kind of fell off a cliff. And that cliff was actually a plateau. And then he fell straight into a car wreck. You get what I mean. Bob Hugin, he just needs to go. His time's done. Replace him with Randy Brown, a current NFL coach for the Baltimore Ravens, I believe it is. Now, you might be thinking this is a joke, but it's not. This guy used to be a mayor of a heavily Democrat stronghold. He would be great running the New Jersey GOP. However, you'd have to convince him to, leave his career as an NFL coach. He seems he enjoys it, which I don't want to take that away from him if he enjoys it, but he'd be my top pick to replace Bob Hugin. Next up, state of New Mexico. How the fuck Steve Pierce still has a job? I have no idea. Replace him with Mark Ronchetti and let's move on. Next up, out of the state of Oregon, Justin Wong is the chairman of this Oregon Republican Party. He got elected back in 2021 and he's already a failure. I don't know how you do worse in a Republican midterm, losing seats, and then don't even win a governor's seat when the Democrat vote's being split. I don't know how the fuck you do that, but you did it. Now, I didn't know who to replace this guy with, so I started looking through people on Wikipedia, of course, and I saw Prineville Mayor Jason Beebe, who I supported for Senate back in 2022, and I thought, you know what? This guy is from a small rural town that voted for Trump by like a gazillion points. Let's say him. Let's see how he does. Hopefully he does better. Look at me thinking any of this is going to happen. Next up, the state of Pennsylvania, Lawrence Taubes. He needs to go. He needs to go. Oh my goodness. I don't know how you let someone like Doug Mastriano in pitching distance from winning the GOP nomination, letting him win it. I don't care if it's fucking, oh, you need to be a team player. Dude, you weren't being a team player in the first place by cutting funding from his campaign when he won the nomination. That alone should have gotten you out of the GOP chairmanship. So we're going to replace you with someone from Philadelphia who, got elected in Philadelphia, but he lost this year. He lost a couple days ago as of this recording. David O. He got 25% of the vote in Philadelphia's mayoral election, which was the best in 20 years. Yeah, David O. would be a great freaking chairman of the Pennsylvania GOP. I guarantee you that much. It'd be a very different approach than what many would want, but it's winning elections, right? Next up, Rhode Island, Sue Sankey. She needs to go. I don't know how you have single digits in both state legislatures in Rhode Island when you have plenty of opportunities to win seats. And you ran against an unpopular mayor in Dan McKee and lost by double digits. Anyway, Alan Fung should be the GOP chairman. Maybe it was just him that people liked and not the party itself, but what if he ran the party in Rhode Island? I think it would be a very strong, a very strong swing in the Rhode Island GOP's favor if Alan Fung, or at least his wife, Barbara Fenton Fung, ran the fucking Rhode Island GOP. That's just my feeling. Maybe that's a bias. I don't know. Next up, the state of Vermont. Paul Dame is currently the chairman, and he's awful. And you might be like, why? They've got a Republican governor. Yeah, but they've got, minute minorities in the Vermont legislatures. They're tiny. At least in New Hampshire, Chris Sununu and the fucking GOP chairman got majorities in both seats, in both legislatures. And that's a swing state, but still, they had super majorities in the state house at one point. You couldn't even get close in Vermont. You didn't even try. That's why you should replace him with Joe Benning, who's just like Phil Scott, maybe just a bit more conservative. But he's also someone who, actually tries to help others out. Of course, Phil Scott doesn't try to help others out. He doesn't even campaign for others. Joe Benning, he does. He'd be a great freaking chair of the Vermont GOP. Okay, next, the state of Washington. It's the last state before we get to the national scene with honorable mentions in the top 10. Who should run the RNC, of course, if Ronna McDaniel were to retire. In Washington, Caleb Heimlich is the chairman, and he needs to go. Not that he's done anything wrong, it's just we can do better, and that's Dave Reichert. Really, you just need someone who can push the party into a suburban-focused push. Of course, Dave Reichert will easily be tossed away and thrown away in favor of Tiffany Smiley if, he doesn't do well against Bob Ferguson or Hillary Franz or whoever in the, 2024 election in Washington, the governor race anyway. But, yeah, I think if he does well enough, he'd be a great chairman for the state of Washington. The fact that he hasn't even considered it, kind of sad. Very sad. Now we go to the national scene. Who should run the RNC on a nationwide scale? Because anyone is better than Ronna McDaniel, unless your name is Mike Lindell, obviously. Who are some honorable mentions for, this position? I've got 5, 2 of which have already been in this video. Looking at the other list, there's another one. There's a second one. There's about 4 names you're about to see again. So, yeah. Anyway, the number 15 honorable mention will be, or the number 5 honorable mention, but number 15 in total, Curtis Silva of New York, the former chairman of the Reform Party of New York City. Now, you might be like, why is he an honorable mention? He did great in Queens. Because he drove the Reform Party of New York City into bankruptcy. Next, Hung Chow out of Virginia, a Navy veteran. This guy, made a competitive race out of a Biden plus 18 district. Of course, he's going to get demolished by Tim Kaine in the Senate race, but that's neither here nor there. Hung Chow would be a great RNC chairman. However, I think he should just be a committee person from Virginia in the RNC, but that's just my honest take. Next, Ken Simpler. He's back. I also think he would be a great RNC chair. However, he would not get a lot of attention and a lot of favorability because he would push the party in a heavy, moderate direction away from where it's trending. And, he'd be booted out after 2024, regardless if Trump was elected and regardless if he led the GOP into a Senate and House majority, hell, super majority in both cases, he'd still be booted out. Like, he could be the best RNC chair ever and he'd still be booted out because of how moderate he is. Just saying. That's why he's an honorable mention. Next, Doug Collins from Georgia, the former U.S. representative. Now, this one's an interesting one. I only put him in as an honorable mention because everyone else is just better than him. He has the Trump credentials. Of course, he's from a district that was very rural. Of course, he did very well in a runoff against an incumbent Republican senator, where most of the Republican, well, at least the establishment Republican Party was coalescing around Loeffler. He still got plenty of support from voters. He got good enough turnout, of course, not good enough to make the runoff, but you know what I mean. So, he knows what he's doing, or at least to an extent, because he still lost. That's why he's an honorable mention as well. So he'd be a interesting choice for RNC chair. And another person you've seen at the final honorable mention slot is Dave Reichert. I've already talked about him. Just apply that to the nationwide scene. Okay, now we head to the national, our top 10 people who would be great chairs. I think everyone knows who number 1's going to be. Everyone knows. But number 10 is Andy Harris. This guy, I know, I guarantee you, when you clicked on this video and got this far, you didn't think Andy Harris would be anywhere near a top 10 list, for RNC chair. But this guy represents a coastal suburban district in Maryland, and he typically outperforms. Like, he outperformed Dan Cox, but anybody would have outperformed Dan Cox. So, and I guarantee you, if he were to run against David Trone, he probably would have beaten David Trone. That's just my honest opinion. Could be wrong, but this guy's got a lot of suburban appeal. And that could probably translate if he runs, the nationwide GOP. The guy also voted for Lee Zelden in, the first round of House elections. So the guy knows the importance of, campaigning and team playing, of where to campaign at, and what's important to voters. And that's really what we need right now. Number 9, Rich Anderson, the chairman of the Virginia GOP. There's a reason I have him on here, and that's because it's Glenn Youngkin's governor. This guy pushed, early voting, ballot harvesting, if that's legal. I know early voting, they're prioritizing that. Of course, it didn't help him in Virginia, because they lost the state house, which is funny, by the way. And if he can do that on a nationwide scale, of course, Virginia was super close. Would be closer. If you can do that nationwide scale, fucking forget about it. Trump's getting elected in 2024, especially if, Trump works with this guy with, early vote and all that. Oh my God. Beautiful. Number 8, John Sununu. You thought I was Chris Sununu on this list, but I kind of can't do that. Trump would never fucking be okay with that. That's why I put John on this list. The former U.S. Senator. Of course, this guy would take a very libertarian approach, for the Republican Party. This would push the nationwide party in a more of a Tea Party direction, libertarian Tea Party. Thomas Massey might be happy with that. I don't know. But when it comes to winning elections, someone who would know how to do that, as well as lose elections, by the way, John Sununu would be a very much a 50-50 kind of guy. You'd win some, you'll lose some, The important races are what matter, and I feel like John Sununu would do a better job than Anderson or Harris. And another guy that you've seen, Steve Abbott. Again, just copy-paste, replace Maine with Nationwide, and there you go. Next is Ed Cox, the New York GOP chairman. If you want to know how the Republican Party should be ran, you should look at New York. They fucking landslided again in every single election they should have lost. Or, they fucking landslided in a red wave, red tsunami from 2022 1 year later. Suffolk County just elected their very first, district attorney or county attorney? Romaine is his last name. He won in a landslide in Suffolk County. And, the red wave from 2022 carried over, of course, 2 places in New York who never had a Republican mayor, at least not in a recent memory, just elected 2 Republican mayors. I believe they were upstate, not downstate, sorry. But, yeah, it was, give a round of applause to Lee Zelden and Ed Cox for that, as well as Nick Langworthy, but I don't have him on here, sadly. Sorry to tell you. Next, the number 5 pick. You've seen this guy, Perry Johnson. Again, copy-paste, replace Michigan with Nationwide, and there you go. He'd be a great pick for the GOP chair. Plus, it'd be very ironic for him to replace Ronna McDaniel. Be very fucking ironic. Number 4, I think most people would expect this guy to be on the list, but number 4 is Scott Pressler, activist and a former organizer for the Virginia GOP. This guy has my respect because he did his damnedest to turn out as many people to the polls in the midterms, to register as many people as Republican as he could. Of course, it wasn't successful, but you can't have a one-man army and win a war, right? With him as the GOP chair, I kind of fear how many people they could register, in a year. Because he, by himself, oh my god, he was a machine. And which is why I think he should have more influence over the RNC and the Republican Party itself than he does now. He probably doesn't because he's gay. Fun fact, I didn't know that. Which, hey, respect. Number 3 is going to be Harmeet Dillon, the runner-up back in earlier this year, actually, where she lost to Ronna McDaniel. She should have been elected, and I guarantee you most of what happened a couple days ago would have been avoided. Not all of it. Bashir probably still would have been elected. However, things would have been a lot easier on everybody. Of course, she wanted to prioritize early voting, ballot harvesting where it was legal, all the fun stuff. Things Ronna McDaniel didn't want to do, and I don't see how she got reelected. Thanks, Donald Trump. It's probably his fault. It was his fault, actually. He recommended her and kept endorsing her. Why? Our number 2 pick is Jessica Patterson, the California GOP chairwoman. Yeah, I credit her for the 2022 midterm success that we saw. It was all her. She's young. She knows how to reach out to young voters, to minorities, to suburbs. She knows how to run a Republican Party. Maybe just California, but she is fucking great at her job, and I think if this number 1 person doesn't want to run, she should run. And we all know who number 1 is, right? Mike Lindell. No, it's Lee Zelden. Lee Zelden is number 1. I don't need to explain this. The guy made New York competitive. If it was a red wave, he probably still wouldn't have won, but he would have been a lot more narrow. If not, he would have won by a tilt margin. I've got a spider next to me. That's great. Also, the fact that red wave that I mentioned earlier is still happening. Yeah, Lee Zelden's the guy for RNC chair after McDaniel. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. This is the Chaotic One saying peace.